A perfect end to a perfect season. The 2026 Major League Rugby champions are the Chicago Hounds. And James and I break it down this episode from the fanfare leading up to the big time game to the championship clash itself, plus the fallout that may tell us a little bit about the future of Major League Rugby. We talk about it all on this week's episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode 201 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much, our Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of making fantasy rugby a reality in MLR. Major League Rugby 2026 has come and gone. James and myself here to break it down for you after what was calling it this episode, a perfect end to a perfect season, at least for one team that has looked dominant all season long. Of course, you could probably allude to the hat that James is wearing here on how the weekend turned out. But either way, though, an exciting championship to break down here on this episode. James, great to have you on this quick tap recap episode as always, as we now look back at how we got to crowning the Chicago Hounds as your MLR 2026 Shield holders.
Yeah, the sprint season, as it was, is done in what feels like a blink of an eye, but culminated in this weekend just gone in Chicago at SeatGeek with as is the name of the episode, a perfect ending to a perfect season for one team. It's good. It feels weird to already be talking about the end of things, but
I agree.
It was a pretty good game to talk about, so I'm happy we get the chance to.
Yeah, blink of an eye is one way to put this season, and this will be the cherry on top in terms of getting to break down this final and what was obviously a season to remember there for the Chicago Hounds. And we'll talk about both sides of it here on this episode. Of course, we'll talk about Chicago and the job that they got done. We'll, of course, talk about the California Legion side of things as well. And a little bit of a shakeup here in the order of things on this episode. We're going to get right into it. In just a moment, we'll get into breaking down the match. James, if you weren't out there in Chicago, one of our listeners or viewers, our very own James Deeley, was out there in the Midwest, and he's going to share his experience when it comes to the match day itself and everything in the lead up to that. James and I will also have some overall thoughts as we, of course, will have all off season long to reflect on that, but some initial reactions now that MLR 2026 has come to a close. Of course, talk about our TFR betting challenge, head-to-head scrummy matchup that James and I went to, reveal the results of that here towards the tail end of the show, and then, of course, catch up on what seems to be a whole lot of news and notes, even though it is the wrap-up of the league. So from retirees to signings to squad announcements on the international stage, we'll get into that. So make sure you stick around for that as well. But jam-packed episode overall. All about the final here, which we will break right down. But before we do, if you aren't already, follow us at the Fantasy Ruckers. Handles up above. If you're listening on the pod, down below in the description, you can find it there. All of the good stuff. Discord community, link in the description as well. Check out thefantasyruckers.com. And of course, check out James, wherever he is at, the curator of the North American Rugby Database. A very, very comprehensive tool that I'm sure a lot of people will be using this offseason to keep their Major League Rugby, addiction going here.
I
as
hope
we
so.
have a long time to wait. Exactly. So, again, all that good stuff there. Make sure to follow, like, subscribe, comment, interact with us. Tell us if you were at the final how your experience was, and we'll, of course, have some questions for you here throughout this episode that you can leave down below in a comment as well. All right, let's get right into it, James. Let's do a quick tap recap of the MLR 2026 final.
Let's do it.
Quick Tap Recap.
All right, quick tap recap, a championship quick tap recap. And as a total of 13 weekends of rugby rolls on by, this last one, the 13th one, um, was an interesting one because I think there's two ways to look at this, James. 35-17 victory for the Chicago Hounds. And I think this might be our simplest match breakdown that we've had all season long because of just how many cards fell in the favor of Chicago. Obviously, going into this one, we talked about them having essentially a pseudo home game, it being, announced earlier in the season that Chicago was going to be the host city. And as soon as we saw Chicago doing what they were doing all season long, I mean, the writing was on the wall. However, if it couldn't become any more obvious of finishing off again the perfect ending to a perfect season, the torrential downpour that James you got to experience firsthand. We mentioned it last episode. We were hoping, or at least California Legion fans were hoping, that a lot of things were going to have to play in their favor for them to have a shot at doing this. Starting off with what seemed to be, at least from the television broadcast, a tsunami out in Chicago. Definitely wasn't in the favor of those Legion fans, at least to start off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to mention this half a dozen times this show. I can't. The TV broadcast does not do it justice. It was so wet in Chicago. Everything was flooded. The tailgate beforehand was just big puddles everywhere. The field was like sopping. You could see standing water in places. Like the seats were soaked. There was just kind of rivers flowing throughout different rows of the stadium just because there's so much water coming down. Like it was apocalyptic. And there was a point, we were under the tents at the tailgate, and there was nowhere you could stand where you weren't getting wet because there was that much wind as well. It was coming sideways, and we were like, I know they usually only cancel it for lightning, but like they're gonna play, right? Still, because it's the final. You can't just cancel the
Yeah.
final. But yeah, I can't overstate how wet it was, and exactly what we kind of expected to happen did happen. We said, well, California kind of struggle in the rain sometimes. Chicago has a lot more tighter set piece. California struggles on discipline sometimes. That's exactly what happened. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it went kind of obviously we had a bit of but it's playoff rugby. You never know what can happen. It was predictable. We predicted it and hoped for, potentially a bit more drama, but it was quite predictable.
I guess that's again, you loop it all in. It is what the story and what people are going to remember when it comes to the Chicago Hounds team.
Yeah.
Nothing, and in all fairness, and I want to be completely transparent, all of their good fortunes, things that they earned, of course, right, in terms of
Oh yeah.
setting themselves up for this and all that. I just want to say though, it felt like there was just the rugby gods of there's like this has got to happen. We got to tie this season to remember with a bow, and I think a lot of people are just going to remember that. It
It's
went
kind of interesting
everything.
though, because the rugby gods in the past, they've not looked favorably on the team that's finished the regular season first. This is the first time since 2021, so first time in 5 years that the team that's actually finished atop the regular season standings has lifted this shield. The Free
Yeah,
Jacks never
incredible.
finished at the top of the standings, which is wild.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the only
and I
time they
mean.
did, they went out early.
First team to also officially go undefeated,
Yeah,
start to finish. They're
the
obviously regular
Invincibles.
season and going through the championship as well. I guess again, kind of feeds into why I think this is going to be a very simplistic match breakdown because again,
Hmm.
it's going to sound and feel like a reiteration of what you and I, James, have been talking about all season long. And they did it on the biggest stage, and everyone got to see it. Now, we put the rain out there as context, obviously plays in Chicago's favor. But what I think it emphasized to me was their ability to, again, be the Swiss Army knife of Major League Rugby that we've seen all year long, right? In
Oh yeah.
terms of there being many different ways, many different styles in which Chicago can find a way to win a game. It could be a bright and sunny day, or in this
Hmm.
case, it could be an absolute torrential downpour, and they were going to find a way to win this match. California, again, heading into this one, we were a little bit more skeptical with the style that they played, and give it to Chicago. I mean, they did everything they could all season long to continue to build and build and build so that when they got to this moment, whatever whatever Sunday was going to look like, they were going to be ready to do that. And that ultimately, in my opinion, proved to be the difference maker when it comes to Chicago and the rest of the field. We can finally say it. The nails in the coffin. Chicago won it.
Yeah.
They were miles and miles and miles ahead
They're,
of
they're,
everyone else in the
they're
league.
the best team that MLR has ever seen. The 2026 Chicago Hounds are the most dominant team that the league has ever seen. Better than any of the Free Jacks teams. Now, obviously, the caveat is that, it's a 10-game regular season, not 16. But look what they did. You can only play who's in front of you, as we've been saying the last, 6 weeks or whatever it is. Better than the Free Jacks, better than the LA Guiltinis that kind of have the air of the invincible dominant team around them, for those fans that remember all the way back to 2021. There is just unparalleled success in for the Chicago Hounds this year. Like you said, they can attack you from anywhere. They can attack you in any different style. They proved it in this. We had front row scoring, hookers scoring, we had a winger scoring. Like, we had Chris Hilsenbeck, amazing from the tee. Like, despite the weather, it's just death by 1,000 cuts. And like, Chris Hoyles actually said it. Chris Hoyles, Stephen Hoyles said it.
Stephen Hoyles.
Said it throughout the weekend. Like, it will have to be a perfect game, which is what you've been saying the entire season. Has to be our best game of the season. Have to be perfect. Whereas a lot of the Hounds were saying, there was interviews with Chris. He is Chris Latham and Lucas Rumble saying, like, they left the 10-0 way behind. As soon as the regular season finished, they just, like, any reference to 10-0, scrap it, screw that. It's knockout now. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And they clearly noticed it. They weren't riding on their laurels. They weren't, sitting back and saying, we've probably got this. We beat them two times already in the season. They went out there and earned it. And no, I cannot say a bad thing about this Hounds team. There is no weakness.
Top to bottom, like you mentioned, James, just the most complete team that I've seen. And again, we can discuss the circumstances in which they were able to get to this point. Again, at this point, I think it's moot because obviously everyone had to deal with those circumstances, and it was the Chicago Hounds that came out on top at the end. Again, you put all the environmental factors into it, you put into the stage and everything like that. Like, again, they put themselves in the position to be where they're at, and the way that their play style, the way that they were able. I mean, we'll get into the X's and O's here in terms of them being able to play a territorial game, knowing how to do that. We've seen it. Like I would say there were glimpses all season long where I was like, oh, like this was the Chicago Hounds moment in that match that they had to pull out to win this final. Like, I get it. It looks easy because of the way they did it and that they were up like 32-3 in a final match at one point. But there were portions throughout the year that you can look back to and be like, yeah, that was the moment that helped them learn this moment that they needed in this championship finals. That makes sense. Like, the start of the game, right? Like a territorial type game, kicking back and forth. Chicago's been there. They've experienced that. They know how to win in a match like that. Okay, the game starts to expand open. It's still raining. They rely on their set piece to get it in, and they put the pedal on the metal, and they know how to do it. You look at Peyton Wall's try, right? Like, they know how to get it done there. And even at the points when California seemed like maybe, okay, at the tail end with 20 minutes left, maybe we'll start to try to make it interesting. They know how to close out games. So again, just like things that we critiqued and things that they maybe were a chink in their armor throughout the season, it came to fruition here in this championship match because they learned all those things in that 10-0 they were talking about, and that's what got them to this point. So again, I mean, I know we're beating a dead horse, but like, I just don't think we can talk highly enough about this team.
No, and like you mentioned, it was 32-3 at one point. It was, but there were quite a few periods within this game where things were pretty even. It was back and forward. It was, I mean, I imagine the Hounds had most of the territory just from my seeing it with the naked eye. But there was flurries of scoring. There was an early try. There was Mason Fletcher's is kind of in isolation. 2 tries in whatever it was, 6 minutes for the Hounds in the early in the second half, then a pair of tries for the Legion. And when the Legion's tries went in, there were actually quite a lot of the crowd that I was sitting in anyway that were quite nervous. There was, I don't know what it was, probably 6, 7, maybe 8 minutes where everything was going the Legion's way. They hammered in those 2 tries, and it got to about, what was it, 32-17 at that point. And that was, I don't know, 15 minutes to go. That's 3 scores in 15 minutes, which isn't too bad for the California Legion, remember. They can do that. And everything was going their way. The credit to the Legion for actually fighting back and getting to that point where they had that momentum. But the Hounds just nullified it with crazy line speed. They forced the errors, which wasn't helped by the rain. The California Legion playstyle isn't helped by the rain. They like to play quick. If they're forced to play even quicker, it's gonna force errors. And they did. I think there was a phase of Legion play kind of towards the tail end when they had the momentum, where they probably went backwards 30 or 40 yards. And that was just kind of like, oh, okay, no, the Hounds have figured it out. The Hounds have got this. It was,
To flip on the California Legion side then,
Sure.
Is it fair to say that as soon as the forecast was locked in Sunday and you did see the torrential downpour and everything, again, being in Chicago's favor heading into this one, that really there was just such a slim chance that California were going to come away with this? Is it fair to say that they were just, at the end of the day, completely unmatched?
Yes. I think the short answer is yes. I mean, like you've already kind of alluded to, nothing was going in their favor. It was going to be an uphill battle regardless, but it wasn't helped by the fact that, for example, they got in late. Their flight to Chicago was delayed for a start. And then they come in and you've come into the Hounds house, you've come into the doghouse, you're playing in front of a wildly opposition crowd. There was, other than people representing the fan group, I don't think I saw a Legion jersey. Yeah. You have no support there. You have the weather against you. Your flights are late. Your game plan isn't working. You're against the Hounds in their house. Yada yada yada. This and this and this and this. It was always going to be tough. And I'm not surprised that that this is the end result. But I don't think the Legion played, abysmally. Yeah. I think they went out there and they played a solid game, but look what you're against.
And I think that's
Hounds
the biggest
aside,
point.
Look what you're against. Before you even get to the game, before you even kick off.
And I guess that's the difference, at least for me, between Chicago and everyone else. Kind of to that point that I was mentioning about how we've seen Chicago make mistakes, but we've seen them then correct those mistakes and look at, here's the finished product that looks as close to perfect as you can be, playing in abysmal conditions that still, at the end of the day, somehow you put up 35 points and look good while doing it.
Yeah, it's the highest scoring final ever, by the way, by 2 points.
Yeah, which
50-52.
For California's side, though, some of the things that we critique them on earlier in the year, or I should say throughout the regular season, were things that we saw here in this final that ended up being maybe not the ultimate difference maker, but things that you can't have go that way if you have any chance of winning, again, the final here against and pulling off the upset. So we've pointed to, James, the lack of discipline, I guess, that California has had in the past. We've talked about missed opportune yellow cards that happen at really, really bad moments. They looked and did better towards the tail end of that stretch. But again, 3 yellows in a very short amount of time, too. I think at one point down 13 men, correct?
Yeah, they were down to 13. And funnily enough, it was Tonga Kofe, the US Eagle prop, got the first yellow card. Then just as Tavai came on to replace him, because you need a front rower, obviously, and then he got a yellow card. So that's their replacement props done, and they were down to 13, and they had third, not necessarily third string, but they had a prop who was probably used to playing the other side. It was not helping, and obviously discipline isn't going to be helped in the rain. But they still, conceded 15 penalties, got 3 yellow cards.
Right.
The Hounds conceded 11, which is actually quite high for them. But that's we always tout the figure of a 10 in a test match is about what you want, is a good game. The Hounds' discipline was just better. It was another thing to add up to everything was in the Hounds column.
exactly. And then that's the point I'm trying to get to is just that like again, you just start adding up. You say the death by a million cuts. Like you just tick off everything. Okay, did this happen? Okay, that's a point for Chicago. Did this happen? That's another point for Chicago. And there just wasn't enough of those points that would even make it and lend itself to become a close match there on California's side. So either way, though, again, a little bit of a different take because I think we all understand why and how Chicago won this one. Like you've been watching, if you've been following the MLR, you've watched and seen it all season long. I think again,
Yeah,
when you take
yeah.
a step back for you and I, James, it's just again kind of what the sentiment of the title of this episode, perfect end to a perfect season,
Yeah,
and
it's
it
it's
just
the same things that we've been touting. The weaknesses for the Legion came in again, and it mattered. It affected the biggest game of the season.
yeah,
Lack of discipline. They can't play in the rain. Their game style doesn't lend itself to this kind of weather. If they don't get any momentum for this game style, they start to get frustrated, and then they start panicking, all that stuff.
right.
It all happened.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, exactly that. I don't think there's any other way to describe this match. So
Hmm.
again, dominant. I don't want to. I again, just as big of a win. It may feel a little bit less anticlimactic because this is something that we've been expecting for the past, I guess, half a season. It really was the Hounds and everyone else. There wasn't as much drama in the final that lended itself for us to kind of get this. But again, congratulations to the Chicago Hounds. First MLR Shield in franchise history. First undefeated season from start all the way to the championship. Again, James mentioned it there. The last team to finish the regular season as the number one team and then go on to lift the shield as well since your 21 Giltini. So again, if those accolades don't mark down what an incredible season it was for Chicago, I don't know what was. And I give credit to California for at least giving it a fight and again, at times, maybe not in this match, but at times this season at least, making it somewhat interesting to not completely lend itself to utter Chicago dominance, though.
They played a
Either way,
really,
though,
really entertaining brand of rugby all season. It just doesn't
yeah,
work in the rain.
exactly. 35-17 final there for the Chicago Hounds. All right. What other fans may want to know, though, James, is that we said that we were going to ask you after you came back. Glad that you made it back, survived,
Oh,
and
thanks.
and got here, all fine and dandy. But tell me about Chicago, man. Tell me about the build up to that finals match. You and I were there together in Pawtucket, so that's kind of my
Hmm.
frame of reference of where we're going with this. Um, how was it in Chicago this year? I know that we've been to Chicago there before and you've gone there. Tell me about the changes you noticed. Tell me about the experience, anything that kind of shines a light on the efforts being made to continue to grow this game for people who go out to big matches like these.
Yeah, of course. So Pawtucket, you mentioned Rhode Island last year. That was the first time that MLR really tried this kind of weekend of events and stuff going on. They had it all at one place last year. The Guild in Pawtucket, the
Hmm.
brewery there. This year they followed the same kind of model in that they made it an entire weekend's worth of events, but they did it kind of in different places throughout the city. So they had on Friday straight away, pretty much when I got there, I went to go and see baseball. Came back after watching my Blue Jays get absolutely killed, and went straight to this event. There was a supporters advisory council, which is kind of the first meeting of that. Very informal, but the idea was to kind of meet everyone in person, get a grip of what the point of this thing is going to be. And there's fan groups represented all over the place. I was there representing the Toronto Arrows, so they still want those ex teams input. Um, that was some interesting stuff. It was private, behind closed doors at this the Hounds' home in the city, which is called Kaiser Tiger. There was conversations with Mags and Graham, the co-commissioners. They did confirm that a champion will be crowned in 2027, so chill out with the speculation. They said it's going to be crowned. They can't confirm the number of teams yet. They said anywhere between 4 and 8, which 4 might raise alarm bells, but 8 is a good thing. Look at the 8. Then that turned into the welcome party. So that was open to the public. Everyone was there. That's where I saw Will Hooley. I saw a load of other supporters. I saw there wasn't any of the players there, funny enough, but a lot of the personalities we're used to seeing in MLR coverage. Then on Saturday was the kind of the big fan fest at Navy Pier, which was really really cool because I don't know if people fans have been to Chicago, but it's It's on the water, on the lake, with a massive Chicago skyline behind you. Really, really cool. Lake stage, had live music. Pretty good turnout. The only bit of rain the entire weekend was the Sunday for the game. The weather was 20 degrees and sunny, 25 degrees and sunny, the rest of it, which helped the outdoor events. But then it was very similar to, as you know from Pawtucket, they had the MLR unscripted. So, interviews
Mhm.
with the coaches, interviews with the few of the players, the captains, any injured, traveling players. So there was, Ryan James, there was Matt Antisev, then Malcolm May, Mark O'Keefe, a few injured hounds. Interview with them, interview with the coaches, some really good insights there, which is how I know, the coaches speaking in advance about the game. And that lasted well into the night and ended up with the Hounds bigwigs in a restaurant over on Navy Pier, who's owned by a minority owner of the Hounds, Chef Art Smith. So that was great, and there was some music and fanfare and food, drinks, all that kind of stuff for any fans that wanted to go in, basically. And then Sunday was the big game. Sunday it started raining about, I don't know, 9, 10 o'clock. I was walking around getting some breakfast in downtown Chicago, and rain started. So I tweeted that out saying the rain's starting already. What was that? 9 hours till kickoff. It's starting now. But that didn't actually dampen it. Dampened everything else, but not the spirits of the fans when we got to the got to SeatGeek and got to the fan tailgate. They have a really really cool bit. It's called the barking lot. They call that set up
Mhm.
by the Kennel Club there, and it's basically just 2 or 3 rows of parking. They just block off, no cars there, and just have basically an alleyway for a tailgate, and it's really really good fun. The rain was so bad. I'll say it again. It was so bad that everyone was just like, "This is awful. Isn't it hilarious?" And there was, despite the weather, no one was in a bad mood. They were all excited. There was still live music. There was trivia, which I kind of didn't get myself involved in because I didn't think that would be necessarily fair. And then I was very lucky that I saw Will McGee around, the general manager of the Hounds, so he took me for a kind of behind the scenes private tour of the Hounds facilities and everything. They have an incredible space. It's massive, and they've gone for like a mobster kind of vibe this year. So everything's done out like that. Like his office is, or James English's office, the president is the Don, and then he's got the consigliere, which is his staff and everything like that. And it's really cool space, and it's entirely devoted to the Hounds. They don't share it with anyone. It's just and they don't even have a separate practice facility. Everything is based at SeatGeek because SeatGeek has practice fields and everything. And it was
Yeah.
really, really a massive thank you to Will for let me see that. But it was really just really nice to be able to get into the dry before the game and dry off a bit before then going in with the fans. I didn't a load of other people, they had a suite which I would have loved because it was dry, but I sat in there with the fans, and atmosphere was incredible. They didn't really care that it was raining. It was just they wanted to see their Hounds win it and cap off this perfect season. But
How many, I guess it'd be good to know, how many fans do you think were, I guess, traveling fans? Were there new fans? What was your vibe on kind of the demographic in terms of that? Like, do you feel like this was something? I know the rain played a damper in it, but even, I guess, the events leading up to it,
mhm.
like, do you feel like this was a draw for people in Chicago, whether or not they did or didn't like rugby?
um, I did speak to a few people whose first game it was. I'll say that.
Okay,
It was obviously massively in favor of the Chicago Hounds.
sure.
But I saw Houston fans there, I saw Anthem fans there, I saw NOLA fans there, I saw all kinds of different teams represented. Not necessarily in massive numbers, but they were
Mhm.
there. And it is, it's fair enough given the league contraction that they have fewer fan bases to pull these fans from to go to travel to Chicago.
Mhm.
And I do fear that obviously they're sharing games not being played in Chicago, but they're sharing the broadcast and time and weekend with the FIFA World Cup, biggest sporting event on
Right,
earth,
right.
which is never going to help. The weather's never going to help. But like I said, everyone there was still in great spirits, and
Yeah.
it was again mainly Hounds, but there were traveling fans smattered about, rugby or not.
Well, hey, it's a good sign. Again, I think it's been an awesome idea for the league to put together kind of this fan weekend
Yes.
in lieu of leading up to the championship. Again, we were there out in Pawtucket last year, and it was a blast. And it sounds like this year had a similar vibe, despite the rain, despite some of the weather and stuff like that. Again, whatever can appeal to both your rugby fan, but also just have a good time
Mm.
and get people out to the stadium. And it sounds like the league is doing as much as they can to get that. So great to hear. And that's exactly kind of the insight that I wanted to know because I think those types of events, at least for me, over the course of what we've been, um, covering this league, following this league, talking about it, you really get a pulse of where maybe not from a financial or from a business sense where the league stands and what they're due, but just from the buy-in from
Hmm.
rugby folks. You know what I mean? Like you get a
Yeah.
feeling of, okay, like are people still passionate about this thing? And
Yeah,
when
there
you
was there
obviously it's gonna
was
be biased.
there was good representation from, like
Right,
local
right.
clubs and all that kind of stuff. What I will say is, were you in Chicago for 2023
No,
final?
no.
When I went to that one, it was fairly common to see MLR jerseys walking around downtown by the river.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, for anyone that hasn't been to SeatGeek, the stadium is probably like 10 miles away from Chicago. Like it's a
Yeah.
pain to get to, but it was fairly common to see. I can remember seeing Old Glory DC shirts walking around. I saw obviously Hounds. I saw Free Jacks because they were playing.
Hmm.
Um, I ended up on the boat cruise down the river. I sat next to Andrew Quattrin's aunt by complete chance. So like there were lots of rugby people around. Um, this season or this year, I saw just walking around. I saw one guy in a Hounds jersey, and I was wearing my
Yeah.
Hounds jersey, so he was like, "Hey, let's go Hounds." But there wasn't the kind of like in 2023 there were wraps on the subways on the loop trains, which you could see from anywhere downtown. There wasn't that this
Yeah.
year. There wasn't really any kind of indication that there was a final on this weekend, at least
Yeah. Yeah.
downtown. So that might have
And I
played
guess
against it.
and I want to put into all the context because, and the deeper question lies on how much this is indicative of the health of the league and things like that. Is you mentioned in Lou or you refer to that final, right? That had approximately what over 10,000 fans, right? In Chicago. And I believe officially they sent out the record in that final in San Diego a handful of years ago. That broke the record for most people at a match, correct? An MLR match, like over 12,000 was I
Uh,
think the number.
yeah, I don't know if it's a record anymore, but it was the record at the time, definitely.
Yeah, and then I think they may have hosted another match in San Diego that ended up being a big time match maybe
Yeah, it was
last
it
year.
was another over 10,000, I think.
Either way, though, the official numbers say, at least from this year, 4,400, around or a little bit more than 4,400 at SeatGeek Stadium in this final. Last year, around 5,600 in Pawtucket. Now, I will say for a torrential downpour and for what you guys had to deal with, 4,400, I know you tweeted this out, James, is actually, I would say, a pretty solid number. But maybe these numbers lend into the fact when you compare that to a final that had over 10,000 people, maybe some of that infrastructure that was in place when it comes to wraps that you're seeing in the city
Hmm.
and all that and maybe kind of more of the fanfare behind it. Is it a downturn to see that our finals have taken a step back?
I think
Maybe, but
it's I
it's
think
it's an
it's
interesting conversation to kind of reflect on that.
yeah, I think yeah, I think we need to be a bit more realistic when we approach this. Yes, it's
Yeah,
down, but you were there, Ryan, in Pawtucket. It was an amazing day. It was great, blue sky
yeah,
and warm. This was flooding, like biblical flooding, and that's not going to help. I know
yeah,
that
yeah,
despite saying there's 4,400 people in attendance, I learned that they'd actually sold kind of just north of 5,200 ish tickets for the game.
okay,
So even that's still down. Now, that's probably because 100% chance of rain, which it was,
yeah, 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 yeah.
is going to put people off. You're competing with FIFA. You've got fewer fan bases where you can pull fans from. I'm thinking it very positively that Chicago made it because I don't want to imagine what the attendance would have been if they hadn't.
Yeah, yeah.
And but I do think 4,400 is a solid turnout for the weather and where the league is right now. The league is paring back on all kinds of stuff. spending to try and cap this spending that's, seeing the contractions and everything. Maybe that's, we're seeing that in the advertising budget for the final. I
Hmm.
will have to see what the viewership was for the broadcast, but I think that is still a really, really solid turnout for the conditions, basically.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And again, we're looking at a completely different league in terms of when that record was set in 2023. What there were tw double the teams in the league, right?
Yeah.
As compared to now. So that obviously funnels into it. It will be interesting though. You bring up a great point there, James. The past 2 seasons since we've obviously have slowly kind of gone down to where we're at now has been in a way bailed out by the fact that a hometown team has made it into the
Yes.
final. So how does a final look in a place where they don't then I don't even want to ask that question. I guess we've just looked out in that space and we'll find out next year. But either way though, good to hear though that even when there's a lot of things working against the league in many different ways heading into the season, but at the most recent in the final with the weather and everything like that, I would agree with you, James. 4,400, I think, is still something to be proud about as we continue to try to navigate everything that's
Yeah,
involved in
listen,
keeping MLR afloat.
in isolation, let's say, okay, it's going to be torrential downpour and you're going to lose 1,200 fans from last year.
Yeah.
That's what it is, basically, which considering we lost 5 teams, I don't think is that bad.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a great point I had. I guess then in totality, as we talk about the finals weekend, we talk about the final match. We're gonna have a more in-depth episode where we kind of break down more topics coming up here this off season. James and I will react to things like the referee review system. We'll talk about maybe some of the broadcast stuff that we saw. Basically, the big changes that Major League Rugby essentially promised us heading into this year, and really, really dive into those and reflect on those on whether or not those were wins or even losses for the league. But before we get into that episode, that'll come out in the near future, James, just your overall thoughts on the season. For me, as you think about that, I mean, when I just take a step back and look at the uncertainty that we were facing heading into this year, particularly to now fast track 13 weeks later, to have had a final in the books, to have gone as well as it could have gone and with the circumstances that were given. I would say that this is a pretty, successful season for the league. A lot to build off of. By all means, very, very far from the golden days of what the MLR used to be, I would say. I still have that yearning inside of me where I'm like, man, like when I look down this, like, so you think about those 10,000, match days at a final in San Diego or in Chicago and the days that we had 12 and 13 teams. Like,
Hmm.
it's easy to compare then and then now and look like, look where the heck are we at now? But I think when you remind yourself about the context of us heading into this year and the turmoil and the uncertainty, I think in a vacuum, when you look at MLR 2026, I would say the league did a lot with very little in terms of expectation heading into this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think you hit the nail on the head in saying there was a point where no one knew that there was if there was going to be a season or not. The MLR has completely restructured. I think they've got the right people in charge now, and they are seeing this was something else from the Supporters Advisory Council. They're seeing the right numbers going the right way, in terms of viewership, in terms of ad revenue, in terms of cutting costs. It's working. It just needs to survive. And the closer we get to 2031, the better chance it's going to have to survive. Um, all it needs to do is survive, and it's
Yeah.
done that. It's restructured. It's still been a pretty good quality of rugby, I'd say. Parity, with the exception of the Hounds, parity has been pretty good from game to game. I wouldn't necessarily say within a game, but week to week, it's been the fine. One of the finalists had a 5-5 record. One of them had a
Yeah.
6-4. There's all kinds of different records, probably skewed because of Chicago. But anyone can beat anyone on any day, apart from Chicago. So I think parity was good. I think quality was good. It obviously was going to drop because you're losing international players who tends to be high quality. for now. But again, considering we weren't sure of, there was a rumor going around that if MLR drops to under 10 teams, then it's done. It's not. We're at six.
Yeah.
It's not. Super Rugby Americas had started at six and was there for a few years. We just got to keep it afloat. And what I will say is really disappointing to see is that rumors have already started about
Yeah.
stuff, and it just sometimes to me it happens every year, and it feels to me like certain fans don't actually want this thing to work.
Yeah.
Any chance they get to poo-poo it, they will and circulate these rumors. I've had confirmation from the commissioner that the champion will be crowned in 2027. That's all I need to know. I will obviously take it with a grain of salt because he's not going to say there's not going to be a
Right.
season. But
Right.
I'm hoping that it will be at least five teams.
Yeah. Well, just like any other professional sports league, you're going to go through growing pains and you're going to go through different eras. We've been through what felt like the golden era of MLR. We're in survival mode, like you mentioned, James, right now. And that's not to say that this league will not ever get back to a
Mhm.
day that we'd consider as maybe golden era part two. But
And both commissioners were saying that they feel that we're past the nadir right now, so we're past the worst point, and
yeah,
now it's just about not necessarily flatlining, but flattening things out and then starting to get trends going in the right way, and that's happened
yeah,
now. I think the season in general was a success. I think that I know there is interest. A lot of cities have interest in these things, and I think the structure is in place to help support that. That they've adjusted the structure completely. Like I said, there's a lot of interest from MLS level um, teams. They've set it up in a way that MLS teams could just bolt on an MLR team as easy as that.
yeah,
I think about there's a random game in Nashville which was we think unconfirmed, but we think that was a scoping out a potential expansion team. Who's to
yeah.
say? Um, it's just that now we're going to have a very, very, very long off season with plenty of people speculating all kinds of stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I guess that's the one thing is I hope, and we've done it before, just hitting that refresh button and hoping that whatever pathways that this league now moves forward from what was again a 2026 season all about that survival that you're mentioning, James, is that
Hmm.
we just get kept in the loop in terms of how it's going. I think that's been one of the biggest criticisms I've had in the past is just like getting blindsided by news that you didn't think was coming or you didn't hear um,
Well,
through
unfortunately,
MLR.
the pattern seems to be that you always hear things from anyone but MLR, and then they'll
Sure.
announce it.
So,
They'll announce it 2 weeks after everybody already knows.
and I think the scramble of last season, getting to 2026,
Mhm,
again, I'm going to kind of give them a free space on the bingo card. Let's see where they go with this because I
yeah.
do think that I'm in agreement that some of having covered it as long as we've had
Mhm.
that there are some dark days very recently, literally 13 weeks ago, we could say
Yeah.
that that was the case. And now, um,
What I want
again,
to what I want to see now that the season's done, obviously give it a few days because dust has barely settled. My shoes are still
yeah.
wet for God's sake. But I want them bang, here's the draft. Bang, this is our off-season plans. Bang, this is what we can kind of
Yeah.
expect. Whether it be this is the kind of content we're posting. This is our um what do you call it? This is our roadmap for the next 6 months or whatever. Don't
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
minute details. Just say expect this kind of news then. So I don't know,
Right. Right.
draft in August, for example. Um, Kits will be released in December, whenever. It doesn't really matter. Obviously, they can't necessarily say that now, but put a window on it and say,
Yeah.
listen, they're done. We're still here. They're probably going to be like toning back on staff and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be fairly bare bones, but put this stuff out there and say, help to quell the speculation and just say, this is going to be the draft.
Yes.
Next, the big
Yeah.
thing, the draft.
Yeah. No, I agree. Again, something is better than nothing.
Hmm.
When it comes to communication, having been and being a part of kind of your PR kind of industry here. Yeah. I mean, even if it's an update that says, "Hey, we're working on an update," it's better than what sometimes we've heard from the league in the past. And again, I think I think because even though we went through a season that, again, a lot of people will build some confidence on, I do think we're ahead for an offseason that may have the most speculation that we've ever
It's
had
possible.
heading into this year.
But again,
Because, again,
confirm this
we'll
drop.
see.
Even if Mags has been fairly proactive in communicating with the fan base,
Yeah.
come out and have, I don't know, state of the league in a month or two, maybe after the draft, maybe at the draft, who knows? But just say we don't need to know everything. We need to know,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
give us something.
Yeah. And with that being said, final rating out of 10, James, that you'd give your championship experience.
My championship experience, oh,
Yeah.
I'll go with 8. I'd
All
prefer
right.
if it was sunny, but I had a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Hey, eight.
I got to see people I hadn't seen in a year, 2, 3 years.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
There you go. There you go. I'd love to hear it. Eight's a win in my books. All right. Well, hey, again, a fun weekend overall. James, again, getting to experience that firsthand. I think it leaves us now heading into an off season where we do have some pretty good things to build off of here. And again, I know it's going to be a long off season. We're going to be there right there with you, discussing all the stuff that comes out, hopefully from the league and other sources and things like that. So make sure you stick with us. But before we officially turn the page, though, James, there is a final last piece of fantasy we do need to talk about.
TFR Betting Challenge.
All right, TFR betting challenge. We talked about it last week, and this week a little bit of a different way we went about things over the weekend. And instead of taking to the sports books, we took over into a little thing called the SCRUMMY Major League Rugby Challenge. And we announced it and we proclaimed it here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show. James and I going head to head for the final. And hey, I guess it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We talked about it last week about Timpson, Forey, Bertranu, all guys that we
Yeah.
highlighted in last week's episode. Keep them in my lineup. And hey, the Fantasy Ruckers boys triumph again here against James Deeley of MLR Stats. The MLR Stats guy ends up falling here in the final week.
8 points. 8 points behind. Yeah. I mean, congrats. I lost to I lost to the fantasy guys, man. I'm not I'm glad that it was close. I'm glad that it was close.
I thought that was going to feel a little bit better on our end. Yeah, it does kind of sound a little bit petty on our end that we're just doing that. But hey, we consider you a pro now. You've been hosted this show enough. But hey, it was fun though. Again, fantasy is just another way to digest the game, and was a fun way for us to work with Scrummy here to get a
Hmm.
challenge going over the past week of championship coverage. And again, we mentioned it all on last episode about kind of the intricacies behind it and how us being and doing the fantasy ruckers for as long as we had got us prepared for this. So hey, great to see. It's a wrap on what the major league final was. Give a shout out. I think my all-star outside of Bertrand, who I went all season long, Ed Timpson, my late
Hmm.
championship MVP, because of the value at 10 coins, whopping me in 20 points. So
Yeah,
we finish
crazy.
off the year as your number ones, including the championship. Finish outside of the top three, though, for the MLR final, I believe. But all that matters is we took down the MLR stats guy. That's what matters.
I'm really, really annoyed I dropped out of the top 3 for the season as well. Just at the last weekend there. Oh well.
You know,
What you
small
gonna do?
price to pay for a weekend of memories in Chicago, I guess. But either way, again, been fun with Scrummy. Hopefully, can partner with them more here, especially heading into a new MLR year and do some fun stuff with them. I know they were out at the final and they had a lot of fun doing that as well. Hopefully, can join them sometime soon. But either way, make sure to check out Scrummy. They do a whole lot more than just MLR. Obviously, we had a blast playing MLR this season, and you can count on us being back next year to reclaim our title as what I guess for almost 365 days we'll get the number one Scrummy title. Is that what I can put on my resume, James?
Oh yeah, definitely. Put it on your resume. That'll look great.
There you go. We'll see. All right. Well, to end the show on a segment that we typically start with, obviously, I had to get right to our quick tap recap of the final. Let's quickly go over any last news to send off our viewers and listeners into the off season with.
News dump.
All right, TFR news dump. James, let's fly through these ones. We went over the
Hmm.
news of the official numbers of our final at 4,400. A couple signings I want to talk about here. Nothing that we have to touch on too deeply, but Oli Devato shares that he was retiring after the MLR Championship, and after that goes into completion officially, I guess now in the hung up boots column here, as Oli Devoto calls it, to career.
Yeah, I
What a way to
mean,
finish, obviously, with a
he,
title.
he's an MLR champion. He already was a Premiership champion, a Champions Cup champion, both with Exeter, capped a couple of times, handful of times with England. I made a comment to Will Hooley that didn't he announce his retirement before a final in Chicago as well?
Hmm.
He didn't win. Him and the San Diego Legion didn't quite get it there, but Ed Timpson, made sure it wasn't a curse. And yeah, he goes out on a high. I mean, that's a really good career. Uh,
Yeah.
Definitely club career. Didn't get necessarily, loads and loads of recognition at international level. He only got a handful, like I said, of England caps, but really great collection of silverware there at club level.
Yeah, and one of those guys that like you'll look back on in terms of the impact he had on MLR, just like a marquee name when it comes to Major League Rugby. It didn't change that much this past season, obviously being with the number one team, obviously in and out of that center line there, with the likes of Tavit Lopetti,
Hmm.
obviously Ollie Devoto was there. Who's the other center that I'm forgetting about that would sometimes suit up there? Um,
Chicago?
There was someone else. Tian Lutz would come in there every once in a while. But obviously the main pairing there with Devoto and Tavit Lopetti, and Devoto doing well in the six matches that he played, nearly 50 fantasy points there, and you double that among the top center performers here this past season on a per game basis. So congrats to Devoto, and again a guy that's going to be obviously remembered for a long time in MLR circles for the impact he had on not only the game but obviously this championship season that was for the Chicago Hounds. Ben Sugars, though, on a flip side, in terms of a guy that is continuing his rugby career, is going to be heading overseas. Again, we've seen this plenty of times. We mentioned a couple episodes ago. This is not going to be the first or last that we're going to see this off season about guys taking that next jump to overseas
Hmm.
competitions, and whether that means that they return like an NPC Bunnings deal versus something like this where they go to the English Championship Rugby. Ben Sugars, don't expect him back in MLR, probably, James, because the Rugby Championship does take place around the MLR season. So I'd expect
Yeah, was it
Ben
Worcester?
Sugars.
Worcester were crowned championship champions. I don't know, just before the semi-finals, I think. So that would
Yeah.
rule him out pretty much the entire
So,
MLR year.
so
Assuming that he's a regular in the lineup, who knows? But yeah, Ben
yeah.
Sugars is he's an English guy, so he returns to the UK. He was playing in Australia. He had a cup of coffee, I think, with the Waratahs um, in Australia, which is probably how Stephen Hoyles got to know him. And now he actually goes and joins Cole Keith, who's playing with Doncaster. At least he was this season. We don't know if he'll be back.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's pretty decent season for Ben Sugars. I think it was 4 tries in 7 games all in. So I'm glad he's going back to the UK and got a decent deal at a pretty high level.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, two great players that
And
obviously
just
have
something that I only saw today actually is the worst kept secret I think in terms of signings is that Stade Francais have finally announced that Rufus McLean was joining them
there you go.
after
There
it
you
was
go. So
leaked or revealed in an article before the season even started. But,
yeah. Well, there you go. A handful of guys that will obviously be leaving their mark on MLR. Last pieces of news, though, that I want to touch on here, James, before we wrap up the show.
mhm.
We'll get into this into more depth as we get closer to some of these Nations Cup matches, of course, starting, very soon, that Canada and the US both announcing their Nations Cup squad. So I want
Yes.
to break down, obviously, from an MLR lens. You go down the list. We'll start with Canada's side. Some handful of familiar names here. Quatrin, obviously, was back with the New England Free Jacks, made a brief appearance there
He
after
made
playing overseas.
one game as a prop, so I'm not sure what was going on there. But he
Yeah.
he got a new contract with Carcassonne in the Pro D2, so he'll be playing there. He's back in the in a Canada jersey though, which I'm very happy to see.
Yeah. Callie Martinez, who obviously was with DC,
Hmm.
making this squad. And then you go down the list. The Walt Kotza of the Seawolves there as well. Lucas Rumble, Mason Flesh on this list as well. And again, obviously, there's a handful of familiars that aren't playing in MLR anymore because of the Canadian eligibility changes. Guys like Cole Keith, Foster DeWitt, things like that.
Hmm. I
But
think
either way,
there was 10, including Quatrin, which is, just the one game. There were 10
yeah,
Canadians that played in MLR this year. Six of them are in the Nations Cup squad. Another three of those are listed as unavailable, like Ben
gotcha.
Lesage, for example, who's actually going to be suspended for most of it.
Yeah, yeah. So either way, cool to see that Canadian squad come out, and then of course a lot of our listeners are reacting to the men's Eagles Nations Cup squad coming back out, and this is a side that obviously no shortage of MLR guys on this one. You go down the list.
Yeah, it's a 32 man roster. I put out like a graphic actually just before we started recording, Ryan. So just kind of jumping that on you. There's 25 of the 32 players in the Eagle squad are from MLR, including I think there's six from the Legion, which is more representation of any team, and then five from both Anthem and the Hounds, which is quite amusing because Anthem bottom of the table, Hounds
Yeah,
champions,
yeah,
undefeated. So that's quite funny. But remember, there was in the extended squad there was 12 players ransom, so they've really cut down on that. There was actually 10 from Chicago as well, so they've cut down on both of those. But massive representation. Over 80% of the USA squad is from MLR this year.
yeah. Yeah, so there you go. Obviously, we'll be able to keep those North American rugby chops going here for at least a little bit longer with Nations Cup just around the corner, set to start off on the 4th of July weekend. So should be some interesting stuff there. And again, not surprising that a handful of the players that we talked about there in that final find themselves also in that international squad there for Team USA and partly some of them obviously for Team Canada as well. So overall, I want to just say congratulations to the Chicago Hounds. Want to give a huge shout out to all of the listeners that have been with us all season long, following along with MLR 2026. And here we go, a final perfect end to a perfect season for the Chicago Hounds, finishing it off as your 2026 champions. James, anything you have to say about your experience in Chicago, anything at all as we close out the final, I guess, non-off-season show of
Yeah.
2026. Really weird saying that because, yeah, the off-season content now comes here moving forward.
Just a massive thank you to everyone at MLR, everyone at the Chicago Hounds, and anyone involved in setting up this weekend. It was fantastic. Can't do anything about the weather. Still had a fantastic time. I didn't speak to a single person who wasn't having a great time. Great events, great city. Congratulations to the Chicago Hounds, and thank you to again everyone who was involved in setting up that weekend.
Yeah, a sentiment shared by me as well, and here at us with the Fantasy Rucker Show. No better way to end it. For James, for Devin Vandy Vanderpool, for Matt Yee, I am Ryan Yee, and we'll see you back next week. Another episode of the Fantasy Rucker Show. The off season's here.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.